Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Aaron for what is a very special review on the channel. The first of 5 reviews we're going to be doing on the Tron series. Of course, Tron Ares releases in cinemas on October the 10th. And we're going all the way back to 1982. To be precise, July the 9th, my birthday, 1982. Minus 14 years before I was born. And we're going to be talking the original Tron, directed by Steven Nisberger. Aaron, how are you doing tonight?
Not too bad. Not too bad at all. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by this one. In terms of trying to talk about it. But yeah, I'm all right. Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. I'm just going to say this now. I know we're going to get you on the Tron Legacy review, which collectively I think we're both looking forward to a little bit more. And it is nice to revisit Tron, I guess we can say, on the channel. Now, back in COVID, I want to say for the 10th anniversary, there was a review, and the logic was it's the 10th anniversary of Tron Legacy. I need to clarify. But there was no conversations of a Tron 3. It was a pipe dream at that point in time. Maverick hadn't even come out yet. And Tron Ares has given us the opportunity to revisit these with something on the horizon. And I mentioned we'll be doing more Tron reviews. We're going to be reviewing Tron, which is this video. We're going to be doing a review on Tron Uprising, the animated series, next week. We're going to be doing Tron Legacy the week after. And then we'll be doing a Tron Ares spoiler-free review and then a spoiler discussion after it releases, which I'm also nervous about because it releases during London Film Festival, which is a great way to segue over to Aaron first. Before we talk this film, what have you been up to recently? And that kind of answers with, yes, you're going to the film festival too.
Yeah. A lot of my past few weeks have been stressing about trying to organise my festival and planning it. But a lot of my stuff recently has been written reviews. But yeah, I will be covering the festival. I think every year I keep seeing more an amount of films. Last year I saw about 17. Year before it was about 13 or 11. So hopefully I can do the same amount while I'm up there. I know I'm doing the surprise film. That's confirmed. So that'll be interesting.
Lovely. I need to beat my last 3 years combined, a total of 0. Yeah, 2 appearances at drinks. Yeah, let's talk some Tron. So we're going to treat this like our old retrospective series for people at home. I have conjured up a schedule, and we'll be doing it in this format for each of the 3 reviews in the lead up to Ares, and we've got it split up into certain zones. Some better feature for Tron, some not so much. But we'll kickstart with the IMDb plot synopsis, which is: a computer hacker is abducted into a digital world and forced to participate in gladiatorial games, where his only chance of escape is with the help of a heroic security program. Oh my, is that a great synopsis that I actually think is better than the film?
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal synopsis because it isn't really like that. And kind of where it's good to go that we'll talk about our memories with this. We mentioned obviously it released in July 1982. I obviously didn't see it till I think I'm in the same camp as you, but I didn't see this until after Tron Legacy came out. So I saw Tron Legacy at the IMAX, first ever IMAX film in December 2010, Christmas break from school. I wanted this film to come out on Blu-ray, and it hadn't ever had a Blu-ray release. It sounds a bit familiar with the 4Ks, if I'm going to get there later on. And they released it on Blu-ray for the first time when Tron Legacy came out on Blu-ray. And I remember cycling. I didn't have a job. I was a teenager. I had to cycle to town to go to HMV with pocket money to buy the Tron double pack. And I got home, watched Tron 1982. I think I tried to illegally watch it around the time the Legacy came out, and this is really showing my age. It used to be capped on, I think, Mega Video, was it called back in the day? You'd be capped at like 52 minutes a day on a free account. So I never finished it. And that was obviously the days when you were younger. So I was able to watch Tron fully properly on a Blu-ray, and I didn't vibe with it as much as I wanted to, and I was actually a bit disappointed. And I think a core point of that is seeing Legacy first. I want to say being 14 years old, being at school, and seeing 80s Tron doesn't hit at a time when Tron Legacy,
Mm.
Avatar, even the Harry Potter films, Marvel
Mm.
side, the
Mm.
20, it's the 2010 still. It's moving into that digital era. So the original digital film, it never really grabbed me in the way I wanted it to.
Mm.
And I was kind of gutted by that. And I understood that. But at that immature age, I didn't appreciate Tron for what it did or was trying to do.
Mm.
And whenever I've watched it since, I've always appreciated it more and more. But I've still never clicked with it like Legacy, like how I will speak about. And this won't be a negative review from me as such. There's lots of things to appreciate, lots of things to enjoy.
Mm.
It's kind of like that Star Wars syndrome where
Mm.
your Star Wars tends to be what your entrance point is. Mine's the prequels.
Yeah.
And I love those original films. It's incomparable to Tron, but I will always have that connection to the originals.
Mm.
And I wonder if Tron is the same. And
Mm.
you're not 40 plus years old, so you can't tell me about Tron in 1982.
No.
But I want to get your memories with the first Tron film.
Yeah, so similar to you, I saw Tron Legacy back when it came out in the cinemas. I remember seeing it in 3D. I didn't get the privilege of seeing it in IMAX, but and I'll probably say more about this when we review Legacy. But that blew my little child mind. That film, from like a visual perspective and everything. And for many, many, many years, I have been intrigued with wanting to go back and watch the original for the first time. One, to see how it compares, but two, I'd heard about its cult status and that it was quite groundbreaking visually. And that had always intrigued me. And I'd seen like clips and screen grabs throughout the years. And again, those kind of, I knew it wasn't going to be visually as impressive as Legacy, but there was a part of my brain going, I'm interested to see how that evolution looked. And I only watched Tron for the first time for the sake of this review, and I suppose it was quite good actually that you asked me to do this review because it finally gave me that oomph to kind of go, right, I'll sit down and properly watch it, because I've been putting it off for so many years, just never getting around to it. And not being a teenager, I do kind of feel the same way that you kind of did. Even though there are things I can appreciate about this film, I was a bit underwhelmed. I can see, and again, we'll probably divulge a bit more about this in a minute, but like, there are things that I can see why people click with it, and I can appreciate it for the time that it came out. But looking at it now, considering how much is like computer generated effects have evolved over the years, but also just storytelling as a whole in the medium of film, it just, there are elements that have aged all right, and there are elements that really haven't. And it surprised me that the elements that hadn't aged the best were not the elements I was thinking about. And again, we'll probably
Yeah.
divulge a little bit more on that in a minute, but it kind of surprised me. Like, the things that I thought would be dated and aged were not the things that ended up being dated and aged, which really threw me for a loop.
I'm curious if we're going to be on the same wavelength, which is kind of
Mm.
exciting as well. Because we've not spoke about this, like, we said, what, 2-3 texts when we're mapping out dates and times, and I'll talk about the 4K releases at the end, which are their own conversation potentially. Obviously, this video is going to go up on Tuesday the 16th, and is it the 19th they release in America, 29th here in the UK, or the 16th in America? I don't know.
I think so,
I think
yeah.
it's Tuesday, so we'll get to them. But let's talk a bit about the origins of this. So, this is a film that was written, directed, created as a concept by Steven Lisberger, who has not had the career I thought one may have had, respectively, of making a film such as Tron. Again, I granted it's not a Star Wars, is it? Like, whilst there's a legacy, no pun intended, on Tron, it isn't a franchise that blew up and took over. It's a very, I find at least, a very niche franchise. And it's kind of like, wait, you guys did a sequel to that all those years later, and kind of us in the same loop again. Like, wait, we're getting a sequel now rather than, let's say, 10 years ago, to be precise. And it's it feels like, and I don't like using this word because I think people chuck too many films into the phrase cult film. I
Mm.
really do feel, not Legacy, 1982 Tron is a cult film
Yeah.
that I think it's a very select group of people that really, really like it, the
Mm.
same way people do with the others.
Mm.
And we'll talk about 1982 towards the end with what films are coming out, because I'm so curious to know if you know about that year, well, that
Mm.
month, essentially. But kicking off with the origin of this. So Steven Lisberger was a big fan of video games, and granted, again, we're in the mid 70s at this point in time. It isn't the video games of today, right?
Mm.
If we say we're inspired by video games, so we've got decades of games to look at. We've got
Yeah.
all the way back to things like Pac-Man, Space Stuff, Snake. That stuff as kids, and then we
Mm.
have things like Last of Us for adults or Fallout or all of that. So gaming, to be a big fan of decades ago, is so different to today.
Mm.
And apparently it just clicked with him that he wanted to do something with video games, and then Alice in Wonderland came into his head,
Mm.
and that's when it clicked about the concept of being brought into a video game. And it's kind of interesting. I'd never thought about the Alice in Wonderland parallels.
Mm.
It's I've seen people speak about, and actually it's so on the nose, it's kind of wild. And I think maybe because Tron is technically a franchise decades
Yeah.
later, that we're used to characters and stories where people go into different universes or different worlds. So seeing a character being sucked into a computer, and especially in a day and age that we grew up in, which is the evolution of computers,
Mm.
it's not the same in the 80s as it is today. It's so much different. In fact, there's a
Mm.
character called Ram at one point is wild. But I wanted to know your thoughts on that initial concept of the
Mm.
idea.
Yeah, that, to be honest, I didn't know that one of his main comparisons was Alice in Wonderland, but like you said, you can see that so clearly when you watch the film. But there was, so I did a mini bit of research as well because I was just fascinated to know how this came about. And like, this is his directorial debut, which is kind of mad considering Disney kind of put all this trust in him and like took a risk on a rather I mean, especially at the time, considering, like you said, video games are not like they are today. It's a pretty bold move, but yeah, I think it's an interesting one. And again, considering his main background was in animation, because I don't know how correct this is, but I think he was an animator or had his own animation company, and that was his shtick throughout the 70s. Um, and with Tron, he wanted to like incorporate elements of that, but also, you know, things in normal filmmaking, the computer element, which we'll get onto in a bit, which hadn't really been dabbled in film ever at all up to that point. And I just find it very strange. Not strange. I find it very I don't know. There's just something about it where I'm like, that must have been a really ballsy move for both him and Disney at the time. And that's the bit that my head can't quite wrap around. It's just like, that is a really like audacious thing to just do straight out the gate. But yeah, I can definitely see those parallels in the it's very on the nose at points.
Yeah, well, Disney's a great topic of conversation because
Mm,
it's not spoken about. This is an original Disney franchise. That's such a
yeah.
weird thing to say as well. When we look at Disney, right, we think Pixar. Okay, they bought
Mm,
Pixar, but they were sort of there from day one. They bought Star Wars. They bought Marvel.
yeah.
They got a Doctor Who deal, which is all up in the air. Like Disney's work, and obviously Disney Animation's the core of their
Mm,
originality, but it wasn't all hunky dory for them in the 70s and the 80s. They weren't
yeah.
they were still the juggernaut. They were still Disney, but they were not I would say the superpower of today that they've essentially dominated the last 15 to 20 years we're looking at now of
Mm,
just whether it be animated films, whether it be Marvel stuff or Star Wars stuff.
mm,
Almost every year goes by. Avatar they now technically own as well.
yeah.
Um, it's a series that is their own. Again, they haven't really I don't want to say marketed that. We've got the Tron ride. I think it was at Disney Shanghai, and it's opened in Orlando in the last 2 years. It's
Yeah.
meant to be amazing, but Tron's always felt like a stepbrother or something of Disney that isn't really one of theirs. Yet they were there from day one, and the fact that Disney took a risk on this film, this was turned down by Warner Brothers, MGM, Columbia, which we know is Sony, but Disney wanted to, quote, do something more daring. And I don't want to harp on about a corporate decision made 40 years ago versus today, but it's very interesting that the Disney of today play things overly safe with everything that's greenlit, that I couldn't tell you the last time there was an original Disney live action film. I'm going back to Tomorrowland, and I'm getting angry because Tomorrowland is the reason we didn't get Tron Ascension, directed by Joseph Kosinski, because apparently that means something to each other. But someone can please point me wrong, because even things like Pirates of the Caribbean, yes, they're original films, but they are part of the theme park as well.
Yeah.
So they're still original as a concept on the screen, but there is an existing part of that story elsewhere. And it's so interesting that, again, Disney made this, they released this, and it doesn't really feel like a Disney film at the same time, right? Do you get those vibes?
No, I totally get what you mean. And now that you've actually brought up Tomorrowland, I don't know about you, but like just from the marketing of that film and something about like the presentation of it, it gave me Tron Legacy vibes.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch Tomorrowland until ages after it, had been and gone in the cinemas, but it definitely felt at the time like a bit of an oddball risk that you didn't realize was actually a Disney film until you see the logo and you're like, oh, it actually is. And it's funny that you mentioned that like Tron always feels like a bit of an outsider, even when they try and reference it now, because when you mentioned that, I was immediately thinking back to like modern Disney things or media that references back to Tron, and it always feels like, I don't think an afterthought's the right word. It more just feels like, oh, we're going to reference this, quirky thing that your parents probably remember. But like, for example, the two things that come into my brain are, I think it's technically a Disney property. Kingdom Hearts, one of the games references, there's a whole level set in the original Tron. I think it's in Kingdom Hearts 2. And it just feels really weird and out of place, almost like, oh yeah, that is a Disney property. But obviously, Kingdom Hearts 2 came out before Tron Legacy did, so that was the only thing they could go. And then one of the later games, I can't remember which one it is, sets itself in Tron Legacy, so it's like the more updated visuals. And another game that comes to mind is what was the toy one? Disney Infinity.
Oh, yes. I had that.
Yeah, I think it was 2.0, had like a whole Tron section and theming around it. But again, even that felt like, yeah, you can have all these big characters that we're promoting, like Baymax from Big Hero 6 and Elsa from Frozen. Tron's also there, but it's not like the main selling point. And I know they had like a Star Wars one and they had a Marvel one and the main Disney one, but Tron always just felt like not forgotten about. It just felt like it was always there in the background in some capacity, but was never the main focus. Even when Tron Legacy came out, that is always kind of how it felt. And I think that's what intrigued me about the franchise, just full stop from the beginning, is that it was never quite the number one franchise for Disney, even though, like you said, they took a risk and backed it in the first place. Every time it was ever mentioned in another form of Disney media, or even other media, it just always feels like the thing off to the side that they acknowledge, but they don't acknowledge at the same time. It was always in that weird space.
Yeah, it's kind of like as a preempt. They haven't really known what to do with it, and I think it'll be really good on a legacy discussion as to what came after. But I'm glad you bought the Disney Infinity because that was a great game, and I remember getting the Tron packs. I was like, oh my god, it was what 2014, 15 when that all came out, and I was like, they're actually
Yeah.
doing the Tron stuff, because it was a shock that you'd get something for Tron. And for this
Mm.
one, I mean, let's talk some of the story. So we
Mm.
perfectly laid out the great IMDb synopsis, but I want to. It's tricky talking about the story when we've both seen Legacy first, right? So
Yeah.
Legacy has a lot of things which I think may actually add to not enjoying the first as much. Legacy is it's a soft reboot whilst
Mm.
being a sequel, but it is essentially the same film.
Yeah.
Flynn is sucked into a computer, and the objective is to essentially get out. I know that's a really short form, boring answer, but
Yeah.
there are many things of repetition in there, which I'm fine with for
Mm.
Legacy. And I think because I visually prefer Legacy, it's kind of like the episode 7, episode 4 conundrum, right? Where it's the
Mm.
sort of same film twice.
Yeah.
Very different, because Star Wars, what it did over sort of 3-4 decades until we got to episode 7, was very different compared to there was nothing from Tron from 82 to 2010.
Mm.
So I can understand that being reran a little bit more, but the story to this one always not necessarily irked me, but I was never invested as much. And I
Mm.
think because, how do I say it? There's such a great concept, and there is a core focus on this that is the grid, that is the visual elements, that it
Mm.
was groundbreaking, and they were dealing with new computers, new system, new software at the time.
Yeah.
I always sensed that the story actually came second fiddle.
Mm.
And where I'm going to go with this is maybe ask you a question or put you on the spot. When you
Okay.
spoke about the things that you thought would hold up that didn't,
Mm.
and the things that did the things you wouldn't,
Yeah.
I think the visual effects holds up so does the score, and I do not think the story does, nor the characters.
Yeah.
Is that the same for you?
I'm kind of in agreement because everything, and this isn't to completely put down all the real world
Yeah.
scenes, but they are kind of the slower, less interesting stuff. And I feel like it's a weird one because the film, I feel like at times spends too much time in the real world, but then there is a lot of the chunk of the film that is set in the grid. I feel like that is something that Tron Legacy kind of went, right, we're going to spend as little time in the real world as possible and get to the stuff you want to see. And I feel like that's one of the major improvements over this one. But that is kind of what I was alluding to at the start, is that the stuff in Tron in the game is the stuff that's surprisingly held up better, which is the stuff that in the back of my head was like, that might have aged the worst, but actually there's a certain charm to that. It's aged gracefully, whereas the scenes in the real world, though they are shot beautifully on 70mm, pacing, story wise, character wise, just don't they don't do it for me at all.
I'm with you. And it sort of in that with me comes the characters where we'll kick that right to about Kevin Flynn, played by Jeff Bridges. He's the lead
Mm.
of this. He is the cocky, the arrogant, the hacker. And
Mm.
it's his objective that he is to right the wrongs that he had developed these games that were stolen from him by his boss.
Yeah.
Now, I don't mind that as a story concept, but I don't ever feel like it really cements itself on screen. That I'm
Yeah.
never. He's cool, and I think. Oh, I've got a really controversial opinion. The things that Avatar is criticized for is actually the stuff I think that
Mm.
happens in this story. That obviously Avatar's a very different film,
Mm.
but everyone's like, Avatar's so predictable, it's so safe, it's this, it's that, and nothing really goes on. I disagree
Mm.
with that, but I
Mm.
accept people's thoughts on it. Whereas with Tron, I'm like, we want to get to the grid, right? And it kind
Yeah.
of felt like that's the lure, that we just want to get there. And I know that they were back and forth with Disney. I know
Yeah.
the screenplay was rewritten, and they
Mm.
dropped one of the writers off. I've forgotten her name. Bonnie McBaird.
Mm.
She went from being a writer to just getting story credit, and
Mm.
apparently all of her dialogue was removed.
Mm.
There was too much dialogue for women. There was too much dialogue on IT or tech stuff.
Mm.
And I wonder that in the early 1980s, that might have gone over a lot of people's head. But would it have made a
Yeah.
little bit more sense in the story? Because I never. It feels like two films, kind of what going for you said, right? That I don't. When they're outside of the grids,
Yeah.
it's quite basic. It's quite.
Mm.
Yeah. Then you get in the grid, and it's actually so irrespectively different a story that
Mm.
there's a whole different subplot and different thing going on. Whereas, again, I'm going to compare it to Legacy because that's our background.
Mm.
Granted, it's a sequel 3 decades on. Um,
Yeah.
it's so fluent that it's the same story in the grid outside of it. His dad went missing. He needs to find him and bring him home.
Mm,
Like, whereas this, I understand there's tech stuff and we need to get to the discs to get the data to prove that you were innocent, but I
mm.
never felt that sense of urgency. I never felt that sense of character, and I
Yeah.
think because the characters in the grid are different characters to the outside world, even though
Mm,
they are played by the same actors,
mm,
the idea that they have there is a computer program for every single human. Essentially, that's the logic,
yeah.
and I don't think it works that well. And it
Mm,
really reminds me of something like Hook, which again came out 10 years after, which is unfair to
mm,
compare to. But you meet all the characters of Hook
mm.
before you go to Neverland. You
Yeah.
get Captain Hook's on the radio on the flight, and you get to meet, oh God, I forgot some, I think Smee's visible. And you
Yeah.
see all these characters. So when you end up in Neverland, it's kind of like, we clocked the murder on the film. Whereas I feel like Tron does that.
Mm,
But it doesn't work necessarily in the story structure to me. And I
yeah.
think that's where I'm a little bit lost that I never really gravitate toward Jeff Bridges, which is wild to say because he's got charisma.
Mm,
He's entertaining on screen and I love him as a performer.
mm.
But I don't really like I'm not I don't dislike him, but again, I think he's got a fulfilling story in the sequel, but not in this one.
Yeah. No,
I don't know what you think of that.
I totally agree, and I don't think it's anything to do with the actors by any chance. Like you said, I don't think it's anything to do with them. I think it's more to do with how the story is playing out. Because I don't know about you, but when like remembering back to the first time you watched it or rewatching it for this video, but there were multiple points, and I only felt this during like the real world scenes. Is that again? There's a certain element that's missing that kind of is missing to get you to care about the thing that the real world people are doing. And I feel like for me, as soon as the film started, it felt like it was coming into a film that had already started 20 minutes ago, um, which threw me off because like the film starts absolutely fine, and we're just kind of halfway through something already happening, but with zero explanation to it. And I felt like I'd honestly skipped a scene, but I hadn't. It had literally just gone straight from the opening credits into the first scene of the film, and I'm like, oh, okay. Whereas I feel like, again, I feel bad comparing it to Legacy all the time, but Legacy does, even though it doesn't spend as much time in the real world as it does in the grid compared to this film, it knows it still knows how to pace itself better. Like it will take its time a little bit. You establish who is in the real world, therefore making that transition a bit more. I don't think jarring's the right word. It's more a case of making that transition a bit more fluid.
Natural?
Yeah, a bit more natural. Whereas here, it's like we come in halfway through a story that feels like we've missed the first chunk of, and then don't get any real explanation of things except for like I think that scene where Alan, Kevin, and Laura are in the lounge bit of Flynn's
Yeah.
arcade, and it's only during that scene you get a gist of like, oh, that's what's happening. We're already like 10 minutes into the film, and I'm only now just getting the gist of the like their motivation and the purpose for doing it. After that point, it feels a little bit more fluid, but there are. I also this is an issue I had with the ending as well. I feel like it ends really abruptly. Like I don't know. I feel like it was going
It
to
just
lead into
ends.
another. Yeah, it felt like it was going to lead into like a 5 minute scene of them showing what it looks like now that he's got the company
Yeah.
back, etc. Just no, just abrupt, and then just cuts cuts to the credits, and I was a bit conflicted. But I feel like that for the start. I feel like that for the end. And I do feel like there is like this weird missing thing in the middle that could have just helped smoothen it out a little bit more from like a story and character perspective.
It's like I don't know how to say this horribly. The scene you mentioned at the bar at the arcade at the lounge when it
Yeah.
says like this is what it took for me, this is what I did, this is what
Mm.
I'm doing. This I'm like, it feels like you've added that scene because there was no story development, and what you've actually
Exactly.
added
Yeah.
is the most important. But it's the most important scene of the whole film
Yeah.
because you're setting up everything as to what's going to come.
Mm,
And it felt like maybe you guys should have gone backwards to have done this a little bit. And
mm,
it's so quick and in your face and doing different things. I'm with you that some of it's, and it feels negative. It's not my intentions. It's
mm, mm.
just it's for me. I think I've seen this film 4 or 5 times total in my life, and it's
Mm,
still like, ooh,
mm.
like it ends just suddenly. I'm always
Yeah.
expecting another scene, not because Legacy did it, not that at all, but it
Mm,
just ends like that. And maybe because we know Legacy first, and we know, okay, so he takes control of he takes control of Encom or something. But no, it's just
yeah.
like bye 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 bye, bye, we're done. Film ends, music soundtrack
Yeah.
plays, and it leaves me a little bit sour. And even look at some of the other characters. You mentioned Alan Bradley, Bruce Boxleitner, who also plays Tron in this, who is
Yeah.
the titular film of the name. Tron, the most underused character in for a character to have a franchise named after them.
Yeah.
I've never seen a character appear less. It'd be like if it's called Harry Potter and he sort of pops up in, I don't know, the Goblet of Fire, and
Mm,
then at the end of the Deathly Hallows you didn't see him again for the whole series, the whole franchise.
yeah.
Because I like the idea that there is this heroic computer program, and where
Mm,
I've always been lost, and this is maybe a structural issue, which is a me thing, and maybe others are going to be angry in the comments, but it's not really Tron's film, but it's a phenomenal name for a film. You
yeah.
can't call it Flynn. You
Yeah.
can't call it, The Grid.
Yeah.
Tron is an outstanding name,
Mm,
and I love the idea there's this heroic character, and we'll get
mm,
to Legacy in a few weeks,
mm,
which I'm really excited to talk about. I know you've not seen Tron Uprising, but
mm,
Bruce Bottlein he's like the second lead in that film.
mm,
I was like, yeah, great. We actually get to see Tron
mm.
being Tron, and he's not really the hero for me in this. He is a
No.
hero, but
Mm,
he's a secondary character, and I'm always a bit miffed when I see him because I always want something more, but
mm,
we never really get it. And I
mm,
I struggle with the user and the program concept in this film more so than the other because
mm.
it doesn't. It just feels like great. We were just going to have these actors in these roles that they've already done
Y-
elsewhere,
Yeah.
and I know you can't technically like move other characters into the grid, but would it have been a better film if you'd have had other characters with him and become the Mantle of Tron or something else? I've never
Mm,
known. And that is ironically what Uprising became. It became you need to take on the Mantle of Tron.
mm,
And this is how I'm going to train you. That's the summary of that
mm,
series, which was a great series. I'll talk about next week. And
mm,
for this, I've really liked Bruce Boxleitner. I mean,
mm,
I'm not going to be that guy and start hyping up areas for cameos, but
mm.
if there is a cameo, I'm betting on him.
Yeah.
Don't know what role, what capacity. Um, I know, ironically, they've spoke this week, the director,
Mm,
about how they, quote, didn't want to do cameos and how they didn't need to bring in characters from the past. I'm like, well, you kind of actually do
yeah.
when it's a sequel. It is
Mm,
just that it's clearly not the sequel that anybody from the original cast bar Jeff Bridges wants to do. That's
yeah.
the impression off of the interview.
Mm.
But what did you think of Tron and Adam?
I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Is that throughout? I felt this more in the grid scenes than I did in the real world scenes, but it genuinely does feel like Tron is a second character in his own film, which does feel a bit weird to say, but that's just kind of how it how it plays out. Um, but it's always something that's kind of not bugged me. It's just a weird because this is at the end of the day, this franchise. Not sure about Ares, but this franchise has always revolved around the Flynns. Um, but yeah, it does feel um, a bit strange. I did have more words in my head, but they've kind of just escaped me. But yeah, no, I do think Bruce Boxleitner's good in the role. I feel like he is heavily underutilized in Legacy compared to it, but yeah, no, he is good. Again, I did have a point I was going to make, but I've for some reason just blanked on it, which is really
No,
annoying
that's
me.
okay. If you remember, we'll bring up. I mean, let's talk
Yeah.
before we get to the villains plural.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk Yuri slash Dr. Laura Baines, played by Cindy
Mm,
Morgan, who passed away last year. A character who, once again, has feels like she has something to do, has nothing to do. Then you get to a very important sequence with Flynn in that
mm,
lounge, I like the little love triangle dynamic they're playing up to, and the
Mm,
fact that even in the grid there's a love triangle, which kind of
mm,
makes it funny.
mm,
But again, there's not much there, and based off what can be
mm,
read online about the script and the changes that Disney made, was
mm,
this a character where they lost a lot of story for or character development for? I
mm,
sense so because she is the one working in the lab at the start of
mm.
the film. Um, but I
Yeah,
don't think she has an awful lot to do. But she is one of the trio.
yeah.
Um, what did you think? Anything more you need to add on that one, or
So I was going to say, like, the love triangle. I feel like, again, the opposite of what I said about Tron is like that whole love triangle thing kind of felt more tangible and realistic in the real world scenes, but then in the grid, it just felt like, I don't know. It just felt really weird. Like the bit where Flynn sacrifices himself and then kisses Yuri. I'm like, okay, where's this come from? It makes sense in the real world, but like,
yeah?
I'm just like it. There's a bit of a disconnect there, and I just remembered the point I was going to make, which is sort of to do with the character of Tron, but was to go back on that point you said about the whole defining of how the whole user person program thing works in this film. I feel like whenever it is tried they try to explain it in this film, it feels quite convoluted to the point where like I don't actually get any more how the whole person in the real world relates to a user. It feels kind of confusing here because I think premise wise it's fine. It's more just of how it's explained in the film makes it more confusing than it needs to be. Whereas I feel in Legacy, they kind of keep it ambiguous and very cut and paste, like, right, a user is this, a program is that, that's all you need to know. Whereas here it's like, well, that's a user and that's how it works, but then it kind of gets more confusing the more you think about it and the more they explain it, if that makes sense.
No, I'm with you on that. It's
Mm,
kind of again, I think my issues stem with the writing and the story angle
mm,
that it can be difficult, and I guess it
mm,
leaves it open to interpretation that people that maybe were younger wouldn't they might have seen the visual standpoint as the big selling point more so, but it does
mm.
make it harder when you are going back to it. But I think one thing I do really like, which works its favor, is the villain of this. Now,
Yeah.
David Warner plays three villains in this film. He's the voice of the Master Control Program. He
Mm,
plays Sark, and he plays Ed Dillinger. Now, we've all worked with someone that goes around taking people's good ideas and projects, getting promotions for it. We all know those types of people.
mm,
I love him. I mean, obviously, he has a very, very storied career, is an understatement.
mm,
David Warner as a villain, this works so well. I love him in the human world.
mm.
He absolutely works. He's British.
Yeah.
He's took control of this company. Um, he's took credit in Saxon and had them removed. I like that angle, and I can live with that as
Yeah.
an antagonist. Then
Mm,
in the grids, he's the master control program that's rogue and controls and monitors everything. It's like, okay,
mm,
fair enough. Um,
mm.
and then we have Sark. I'm gonna be honest. I've never cared for Sark as a character.
No.
I I love Ed Dillinger, the concept of that, and I know it was,
Mm,
we want the actor to play this again, but again, and I know it's decades later, but if there was a way that they could have not bring him down into the grid because it wouldn't make sense for Kaz Dillinger, I
yeah.
like that the Master Control program is feeding Dillinger on what to do. That's
Yeah.
one of the things I really do like with the
Mm,
grid to reality, and I don't think we get that with the other stuff.
yeah.
Um, but as far as villains go, I really do like him in this.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of the stronger points, and I think, I mean, Tron's not short of good villains. You've got
Mm,
Rinzer, if you want to call him that. Clue, who pops up in this. Actually, that's a
mm,
question for you. Let's talk to him in
mm.
positive. Do you
Yeah.
expect to see Clue?
No, not not at all. Because I was a bit. That did throw me off a little bit. Because when he's doing this thing and trying to hack, and then he just drops the name like that his name's Clue. I'm like, oh, okay. And then Clue's dead within like 5 minutes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's going to be because this is the thing. I like Legacy a lot, but I have not watched it for a while, so I'm going to be really intrigued rewatching that to see if there's any rough
I
explanation to that.
That's fair. I love the concept of Clue for Legacy, I know this is a different conversation, but it works in this as well. I think it's great that they took this very minor character who, as you said, has a couple of minutes of screen time, like plucked it to be the villain in the
Yeah.
sequel decades later. I've really liked that, and you're right. It throws you the first time you see it, and it throws me every time because also I think he dies when the recognizer sort of flattens him, and he doesn't. He's then just suddenly in a chamber, like oh, and then he does die. But yeah, I'm excited for the rewatch and Legacy for that. But it's a lovely Easter egg. I did want to bring that up. But sorry, your thoughts on David Warner too?
Yeah, no, I pretty much agree with everything you kind of said. I'm not a massive fan of Sark. I just feel like he's there for the sake of there being a middleman between getting to the MCP. But I think him as Ed Dillinger and him as the MCP, I thought were great. He's menacing in just the right way, whether he's not like overdoing it. And like you said, I thought it was actually quite funny the fact that the MCP is borderline blackmailing Ed to do his dirty work, which I thought was quite a neat twist. It played. I agree with what you said. That relationship between the real world counterpart and the version on the grid, I thought was better handled than the other three characters because there's more of a black and white correlation. Like that's what's happening on the grid, and it's affecting the real world person through that means. Whereas all the other characters, it's a bit more sort of explained, but also ambiguous. So there's not quite a massive overlap. But I really like that distinction of like, right, computer is blackmailing the real world person. That's kind of all you need to know, and it's controlling him that way. Works perfectly, and I think the film does a really good job of showing that.
Excellent. No, absolutely. I mean, we've spoken about characters. Let's talk about the world. I know we've spoken about the grid in pieces, but I did think doing the schedules, it's right we talk about the grid as itself because visually, it's probably one of the most iconic locations in cinema. I mean, there's not a very iconic location, but in terms of world and universes, to have a digital world within a computer, within a game, has not really been done much. And I love how I'm going to talk about Legacy again, which took a shot every time we bring it up. Its evolution across time will make for a great discussion next week. And I love what they do in this film with the grid, that it sets not everything up. For 1982, for it to be the forefront of computer animated technologies in film, I think they did a phenomenal job at creating this. And it's actually quite scary when you really do think of 1982 as a year. If this had come out in the early 90s, it would be groundbreaking. But the fact this is the early 80s, pioneering is an understatement. And a phrase that I've seen is from John Lasseter, obviously one of the founders of Pixar. There's no Toy Story without Tron, which this is created within the computer. And whilst we have, I'd say we've been fairly critical in a fair way, the reason people remember this film and speak about this film, it's the visuals, it's the music, and we'll get to the score. But I love the idea. I love the costumes in the grid. I like the ideas, the concepts, the discs, the recognizers, the machines, the vehicles. It all feels like games we played growing up, and we kind of did. Like Snake is light cycles, and we all had that on our like first ever phone, pre-internet eras. And I really appreciate, and this is where I really do appreciate this film. And it's not to sound like a child about it. Oh, look, flashing lights, but there is nothing like this that we have really seen in cinema.
No,
we haven't. I'm not saying it's got a monopoly. Someone please comment and point me wrong, but I struggle to think of many films where it is set inside a computer, like quite literally, and it feels ahead of its time, being in the 80s still.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think also because again, this kind of led me down a bit of a rabbit hole after watching the film, just to see how they achieved the visuals. And I genuinely love the fact that, like, yes, it is computer generated, but there is and I even noticed this a little bit as like someone who loves animation. There is elements of like 2 drawn animation in there on top of the CG, and it blends so seamlessly. And there are films that dabble in these sorts of effects for the rest of the 80s that have aged really poorly. But I think it works brilliantly in Tron because it's got such a, again, it's very simplistic, the style, but it's got a style. It's a very recognizable style. And I think because it is very over stylized from the costumes to the very um was it singular color use in certain scenes,
Yeah.
I think that gives it a very, that's made it age very gracefully from that perspective. Is that it's all very simple and basic and ahead of its time, but it's stylized unlike visually anything that I can really think of. And again, with the whole costumes, the thing that always blows my mind is the fact that like the process of just trying to film those costumes alone took like, I can't remember the exact amount. It's like 4 layers of film stacked on top of each other, all with a different exposure. And like, as someone, you're probably the same. As someone who used to watch behind the scenes of on DVDs all the time, that sort of stuff I find genuinely fascinating, and it shows that there's actually like a lot of thought and care and um like just a lot of prep put into the idea of how the fundamentals of the visuals in this film would work, whereas they could have gone the simple route and just gone, right, we'll do it in the computer, which again would have been hard to do at the time. But the fact that they had a process that was convoluted and never done before just for the suits, but it kind of works. They had computer effects. You had all these elements. It wasn't just the computer graphics. They blended animation, different film stocks, different exposures, just to achieve that look, and it still holds up. Even though certain bits look dated, it still fits that style. And I think, I don't know, it just works. I'm mincing my words now, but that's one thing that people kind of forget is that, like, yes, it's all in the computer and it's groundbreaking, but there's more elements on top of those computer effects to really sell it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think as well, because it is the early 80s, there has to be. There's an amazing. I know you've seen it. The ILM series on Disney Plus is remarkable, particularly the first season.
Yeah.
I like the second season, but it's like, hey, let's do like a 10-episode season on 15 years. And then the second season was like, hey, let's do like 3 episodes on the 10 years after. Like, eh? But I get it because they wanted to get to the point of shutting down the old building. But they spoke about Tron a lot. And I know with this, it's you have to have the, I don't know the right way to say this. There has to be a film that sets a precedent of what's to come, right? Jurassic Park is the precedent of modern CGI. Star Wars was obviously the precedent of everything. Attack of the Clones is what led to, obviously, digital being everything. Tron opened that door for animation to cross with live action, for live action to cross with computers, to do it in a different way, to have first ever computer generated sequences. And you forget how short the light cycle scene is in this film, if I'm honest. That it is done, like, you get one at the start for about 30 seconds and you get the other one for about a minute. But that still looks phenomenal. I know that PS2 graphics is used as a criticism these days for bad CG, and I actually think it's some PS2 games do it better than some modern films. Looking at you, Ant-Man. There are times when films from the 80s like this, which are pioneering, look as good as stuff today, because what was at the peak of its time in the 80s has been digitally not remastered, but it's been kept alive for better or worse term as the decades have gone by. And I think the grid has that. And I think what really works for this film, looking at it decades later, is the fact Tron Legacy went with a completely different design of the grid, and it makes it look eras where he redesigned the grid. That was his big build-up of why he went missing. Everything was going to change, and I like that this feels so appropriate for the 80s, and Legacy isn't trying to copy that. It's not trying to remake that. It's allowing Tron to exist as it did and as it was. I know that in Ares, in a trailer, there is like an 80s design grid, which we get Jeff Bridges, looks very retro. Obviously, it's a trailer. We don't know how that film's going to be, but if they go back to the original grid and it looks
Mm.
worse than 1982, there's going to be discussions and stuff going.
Yeah, that's a
It's
yeah.
something I'm genuinely a little bit fearful of. And
Mm.
then Tron Uprising was a blend of like, hey, this is the animated version of the grid, even though it's
Mm.
animated obviously in the film and in both films, and it sort of blends the two and it's set between the two. So I like the grid has
Mm.
evolved over decades, and again the
Yeah.
designs. Yes, it's like the real world stuff, but
Mm.
there's no real world things that look like a recognizer. Yes, the light
Yeah.
cycles and motorbikes are a cool thing,
Mm.
but there are so many wonderful ideas. I sort of love it for that.
Mm. I
And
was all.
oh,
Oh,
sorry,
sorry. I
no,
was. I was also going to say that, like, because I haven't actually seen Tron Uprising, but from the bits I've seen of it, and this is me going into an animation thing again, is that like that's cell shaded, I think. So like there's exaggerated blacks in the faces and the facial features and the designs, but that mimics the kind of over contrasted look of the suits in the first film, which I think is, again, like you said, a nice evolution if you're looking chronologically from Tron to Tron Uprising to Tron Legacy, where Tron Legacy looks everything looks slick and clean and polished and stylish. Tron Uprising is a nice little balance thing in the world. And again, it's interesting that you mentioned that ILM series on Disney Plus, because I think in the episode they mentioned Tron because ILM at the time was so heavy with like practical effects, and that was the way that they knew, and that was all that existed at the time. I remember there's a bit, I can't remember what episode it is in, but when Tron comes out, they all suddenly are like scared because it's like, oh god, does that mean these methods are going to go out of fashion? Does that mean we're going to lose our jobs? But I do find it interesting that, like, over the course of that series, you then see that ILM adopts the same things that made Tron work, and there's a nice little evolution there. So I just wanted to add that while it was fresh in my head.
no, it's worth bringing up. It's, for anyone that's into like CG visual effects, it is probably the best documentary ever on, respectively, visual effects within that industry. Moving on,
Yeah.
I think not in a rude way, but obviously because West has sort of set the new benchmark in the last 15 years. There's not going to be any West documentaries like for a very long time, whereas ILM have been the pioneers for an incredibly amount of time, especially also now being owned by Disney as well within the Lucasfilm banner. But let's talk the score. So it's composed by Wendy Carlos. I've got something controversial for you.
Go on.
I don't love the score as much as everyone else, but I really do like the score, and this score works better as a Disney soundtrack than it does a Tron score, because we have been blessed by Daft Punk and soon to be Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from Wendy Carlos, and I'll get myself uncancelled now for saying that. I still have it on vinyl. It is behind me, but I've never, out of sheer willingness, bar doing this review, gone and put the Tron soundtrack on. There's a song by Journey, which is great, but that's not Wendy Carlos. I'm going to say it again. When your introduction to Tron is Daft Punk, unfortunately, you have no chance of recovering. However, that is not to take into the fact that I know this film existed decades before, and I know that the impact of the score in this film is what led to, apparently it's just a huge influence on Daft Punk's career as a whole.
Yeah.
So it's more the fact it came full circle, but there is no denying the impact of Tron, especially the score. It is just not necessarily a score I enjoy as much as others, but I also appreciate in 1982 when you're at the sort of peak of John Williams and the sort of not traditional orchestral music, that's the wrong word, but this is where we're starting to see more synthetic music coming into the horizon. And for something like Tron, it does need a soundtrack reflective of its era. And I think it absolutely delivers with this. Obviously, Wendy Carlos has been a pioneer of the industry. I think she'd worked on a couple of Stanley Kubrick films as well. But this is just a different level to what had been there before.
No, I'm kind of in the same boat because, like, funny enough, you mentioned the Stanley Kubrick films. Like, her score for A Clockwork Orange and The Shining are iconic in their own right, and they work for those films. But for the sake of Tron, it's a weird hybrid because one, everyone's immediately comparing it to Daft Punk, which I feel is a bit unfair.
Yeah.
But there are elements again similar to you. This isn't my favorite score. I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to it on its own, but there are things I do appreciate about it. I think I've read somewhere that when they were making the film, she had like a full synth blown soundtrack, but Disney wanted to added some orchestral bits in there on top of it. I think just to make it a bit more palatable, especially considering the time it came out, there weren't that many scores that were just fully synths. And I know this might, again, similar to your thing, this might sound controversial, but I prefer, and I know this sounds rich considering this is a review of Tron and it's all digital and stuff, I prefer the orchestral bits that are underneath the synths because I feel like they just flow a bit better, whereas the actual synth stuff has its charm. It's a similar point someone could make about the visuals. Is that like it's got its charm, it's fine, but for certain scenes where like it needs to kind of amp up the excitement or the tension, it just feels a bit one note. And I'm gonna sound like a right, I'm gonna sound like a right arse here, but like compared to, there are two films I'm thinking of now that also came out in 1982 that
Hmm.
also had very synth driven soundtracks, that being
Hmm.
Blade Runner and The Thing. Those scores are a lot more recognizable. They're a lot more. I mean, they still hold up today, those scores. Like, you could listen to them now and they still like something that sounds fresh that would have been made last week. Um, and I know that's a bit unfair because you've got the likes of Ennio Morricone and Vangelis, so they are also, like Wendy, pioneers in that thing. But it is interesting to see Tron come out that same year with two other big sci-fi films that had just as good, if not better, scores that were also very synth driven that have held up a lot better than Tron's. Um, so that's just something interesting that I kind of noticed thinking back to what else came out in 1982, but also the other films she'd previously done. I do think Tron is her weakest score, but again, I can understand if someone likes this score a lot. I can completely understand that, but it's not my cup of tea, and I do think it's something like the films that kind of gets um,
That is
better and
improved upon.
improved upon as with
That's
each one.
yeah. And that's what makes it a little bit harder talking about the first Tron film. And I guess if we talk about the legacy, put intended of this film before we go into maybe our favourite scenes of final film, I just
Yeah.
want to talk a couple of box office things. So,
Hmm.
1982, this grossed 17 million. Sorry, this had a budget of $17 million, and it grossed around 50 million. So it
Hmm.
wasn't in the top 10 of the year, but for discussion's sake, it was Disney's highest grossing film in 5 years. Now, you've just name dropped two films, and
Yeah.
this is why I sort of laughed. I do not know if you are aware of
Mm.
June 1982, that many regard as the greatest month in sci-fi history.
Okay.
For those unfamiliar, I'm going to read out with the release dates American, not British, because we always get screwed.
Yep.
June the 4th, Poltergeist. June the 4th, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. June the 11th, E.T. June the 25th, Blade Runner. June the 25th, The Thing.
Mm.
2 weeks later, July the 9th, Tron.
Yeah.
You have some of the most famous films in history releasing in the same month, in the same
Yeah.
year.
Mm.
And this isn't me to talk about Tron's box office, it's not that at all, but this is like the aftermath of all of those. What you spoke about with scores, I was trying to avoid bringing up E.T. Because obviously you've got John Williams at the time, and that
Mm.
was the highest grossing film in history when it came out. I understand why Tron wasn't as big a hit as any of them. It's a much tougher
Mm.
sell compared to them. Blade Runner did not perform financially. Everyone knows that
Mm.
at the time. I'm assuming Star Trek did because it was Star Trek.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but the fact you have the highest grossing film in history and this came out within a month of that, that's quite
Mm.
impressive for Tron's sake. But that crowd, and that is the sci-fi boom post Star Wars, isn't it? You've had Star
Yeah.
Wars with The Empire Strikes Back. Everyone's getting involved in sci-fi, and it's great for the industry, and I love it. It's like the ultimate pop quiz question. Is those
Mm.
films?
Mm.
But it's worth also bringing the fact that it was nominated for 2 Oscars, Best Costume and Best Sound. And the funniest irony was that it was disqualified for being nominated for Best Visual Effects due to using computer animation. That's absurd, but
Mm.
equally, I guess it's funny looking back 40 years later, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a visual effects Oscar.
Mm.
And it very rarely goes to anything that isn't using computer generated image.
Mm.
What do you think to those? Like, not like, oh, here's a box office analysis, but like,
Mm.
it's still got a legacy, and it was still successful,
Mm.
but it underperformed to what Disney wanted it to be, which is
Yeah.
going to be fascinating given we might be saying the exact same thing in 2 weeks' time.
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely a weird one. There was a part of me thinking that's obvious, like you said, it's obviously still going off the back of the boom of the Star Wars films. But there is a part of me of like, considering Dune was so rammed with that specific sci-fi genre, do you think there also might have been an element of, and I don't
Fatigue?
want to, yeah, I don't want to say, I was about to compare it to like, oh, superhero fatigue and all that, but like, that's a
I'm with
lot
you.
of big heavy hitters in one singular month, and then that's coming out just after
At the
that
end.
thing. Yeah, that's
And,
my kind of the thing I thought of.
and Rocky 3 was the end of that May, for also for that. I know it's not sci-fi, but
Mm.
I'm with you. I think this being more of a family-orientated film,
Mm.
every single family went to watch E.T., not
Yeah,
Tron.
yeah.
For the sci-fi, okay, Blade Runner didn't perform. Sci-fi would tick the boxes of an older science fiction fan. Star
Mm.
Trek, the second film, which is a sequel film series to an incredibly successful series from the 60s.
Yeah.
Whilst Tron is original,
It's more of a
it
harder
kind of
sell.
it's been lost. Yeah, it's a harder
Yeah.
slot for it, and because it is aimed at families, it's Disney. You do need it to come out of summer, but no one knew how
Mm.
big ET was going to be. But I find it interesting. I'm glad it found its home.
Mm.
There are audiences there, and if we talk about this in the year sort of 2025, the 4K remaster releases next week. I think I
Mm.
actually forgot to send you the video.
Yeah.
They showed it at the Academy Museum a couple of months ago, so it was the first screening of this 4K remaster.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a separate conversation for another video I'm half curious to do, but I need to watch them
Mm.
first. Disney have put a lot of money into these remasters. These aren't your very typical, hey, look, a classic film has been released on 4K.
Mm.
They've got rid of some stuff with AI and done some nonsense with that.
Mm.
They have gone back to the drawing boards, the original, whether it be reels or the video files. They have touched up all of the visual effects.
Yeah.
And in this video online, it basically does the old school Blu-ray before and after transition.
Yeah.
And it looks remarkable. And they've now released a couple of side-by-side stills of the Blu-ray with the 4K.
Okay.
This 80s Tron, I think, is going to look the best it ever has. And I'm not just saying that as a pun because it's on better software.
Yeah.
It looks and comes across to me like
Mm.
Disney have put the money into this remaster, that we're not just going to throw it on Disney Plus. We're not just going to chuck it and say, here you go. We pressed a button and suddenly it was like upgraded into 4K. It looks like it's been done with care and attention, which is what it needs.
Yeah.
And they've done the same to Tron Legacy. Now, the photos aren't out yet. The report says that they have, quote, remastered the visual effects on the de-aging software on Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, I heard
The
about
context of that I'm so curious by, because is it a George Lucas Star Wars touch-up where he actually goes and makes new video files to improve it? Or is it them pressing a button? But I'm really optimistic for the 4K Tron. Again, obviously, I understand why they're releasing it so close to the film. But they announced it at Destination 23 at the end of August. It has been rumoured for a very long time. It's not much of a turnaround. I'm not being nosy because we didn't get it before this review, but I'm optimistic to see it, and I hope maybe I can find a better evaluation, nice things to say. Because some films went from VHS to DVD to Blu-ray, not too much change, but some it was drastic, and it looks like it's going to be a very drastic jump from Blu-ray to 4K for this, which I actually do appreciate, and I'm assuming Steven Lisberg is involved on there too. He's still got credits on the new Tron film and other stuff, so I'm really interested to see what's changed. But I just wanted to talk about it in the context of this Tron review, that because we spoke about how the visuals have held up.
Yeah.
And we know the story can't change thanks to a remaster, but
Mm.
the visuals can, and
Mm.
that's something that's really exciting.
Yeah, no, I'm intrigued to see. I mean, I'll be intrigued to see those side by sides actually. But yeah, it's a shame that they obviously they can't do like a like a I guess it wouldn't be a director's cut, but like a new edition of it where they kind of
Yeah,
just add extra scenes in. That would have slightly improved it. But I am intrigued to see those, not just for the grid scenes, because obviously, like you've said, they've probably got the biggest improvement in terms of the visuals. But I am kind of actually intrigued to see as well how much they've tweaked to the real world scenes, because like I mentioned earlier, those were shot on 70mm film, and when I was watching it the other day for this review on Disney Plus, those looked, again, they're really mundane, boring scenes of people in offices and thing, but they, this is probably me being a real film nerd here, but they looked gorgeous for some reason, and I think it was just the quality of the film stock. Not to get too nerdy into it, but like it just looked, I don't know. There was a scene with Laura and Alan walking. I don't know what that section of the building was with all the pipes, like the lab area. But they were just
yeah,
walking. They were just walking down. I think there was like a really weirdly framed shot, but they were just walking down this section with all the pipes, and it just looked stunning for some reason. And then you've got the shot at the end of the film, where it's like a time lapse of cars, the city from a distance, and you see car lights and that, which I suppose does nicely mimic a computer board, which I thought was a nice touch. But I'm. It's weird. As much as I know that the visual effects scenes will probably look gorgeous now, I'm interested to see how much they will do to those real world scenes as well. I know they're not the draw of the film that people go to see it for,
yeah.
but considering they're shot on 70mm and they still look pretty damn good on like a standard HD version now, how are they going to look what a couple Ks up?
Yeah, and I'd say of my experience of home media that
Mm,
older films shot on film tend to actually outlive digital,
yeah,
because obviously when it's
definitely.
digital, it's been shot on 1080p for the sole purpose of it being 1080p, and no one was thinking in 2002.
Mm,
Guess what? We're going to keep evolving this next 20, 30 years. So
mm,
that is it's a thing worth talking about. It's a thing worth bringing up, and we'll be able to have a chat about that probably at London Film Festival, maybe,
mm,
if you get the chance to see it before. But where we'll go with this, because I know we're slowly starting to round out.
yeah.
I want to get your favourite scene. Now, I'm going to put two on there. I'm going to put one which we spoke about a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
which is them in the lounge. Whilst it's
Mm,
not an important scene, it's not action. It gives the characters motives. It sets a scene, and it's the most character development we get in the film, and it shows
mm,
the relationship this trio has.
mm,
Following on from that, my favourite scene overall.
mm,
Oh my god, I didn't talk about Master Control Program, but I just have to add this on.
mm.
Every time I see the Master Control Program, I just think of Moses from South Park, which is really horrible to say, but obviously that's what it's based off, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
it's really not hard to think about it. But I love the light cycles. Listen, I'm
Mm-hmm.
simple taste. It's Tron. It's light cycles. I love seeing the different versions. It looks incredible
Mm,
in this film, and it really did sort of help change cinema, those sequences. So
mm.
yes, boring, but maybe correct answer. The light cycles is my favorite scene.
Um, yeah, I think I'm going to share one favorite scene with you, which is the lounge scene, because that, like, I think I said this earlier anyway, but that is the first scene in the real world where I actually kind of, I mean, I think anyone will say this. It's the first scene in the film where you actually understand now what's happening. It sets everything in motion, and I just think everything about that scene just nicely works. But I think my favorite scene, it's weird. I was going into this review expecting to say one of the light cycle scenes or even the recognizer chase.
Yeah.
But actually, my favorite scene, because it gets me to care about a character that isn't in the film much and isn't a main integral character, but he's probably the most likable outside of Flynn, is when Ram passes away. That scene, like, actually, it wasn't like it didn't choke me up, but like it hit more of an impact than I thought it would for a character that's not the main draw of the film. He's only in the film for like a little bit, but it kind of worked. I don't know why. And it's kind of the scene that's kind of stuck in my brain the most outside of the lounge one. But yeah, that's weirdly my pick. I thought it would be one of the more action-packed sequences, which I know going into Legacy that is going to probably be one of my picks. But yeah, that weird little moment where Ram dies after the bike crash. That for some reason really worked for me. Don't know why, it just did.
I love the fact that it's all called Ram in 1982. That's proper on the nose
Mm,
IT in the 80s, isn't it? Like, we're calling him Ram because that's a thing with computers.
yeah.
Whereas today it's like, but no, that's the great thing to talk about. And then I guess if we move into final thoughts for the outro list,
Mm,
this is a film, whilst something quite negative, it's a film that I respect more than I enjoy it, but it's still a
yeah.
film I like. I don't really do star ratings; it's not my thing, but it's very middle of the road, which is okay because we aren't the generation that grew up with this. We are the generation that had Legacy, and we discovered Tron through Legacy, and
Yeah.
due to that, it's impossible to not look at that when you're going back to something such as the original Tron for the first time.
Mm,
And it is something that many people grew up with. They spoke about seeing Tron at the cinema for the first time, or they spoke about growing up with it back in the 80s. Whereas for
mm,
us, it was we got to find it. And I really appreciate what this film did for cinema. I
yeah.
appreciate its iconography more so than my outright enjoyment of it. And I would always say it's not a film I can recommend to anyone. I just
Mm,
tend to get them to watch Legacy because I think you can
mm,
watch Legacy without this and put two and two together.
yeah.
I don't think it's not filled with references. It's not filled with continuity standpoints, but I think this film's got heart. It's
Mm,
got charm. It just doesn't have the story that I wish it did to match everything else that's going on.
yeah. I'm totally in agreement. Tron. I think the best way to describe it. I know you said like you'd probably never recommend it to anyone, but I think for me, I would treat it more as one of those films where it's like I'd recommend it's like a one and done film. Like watch it
Yeah.
once because of the status that it has and the legacy that it has. But then after that one viewing, there's really no point to go back and revisit it. Pretty much everything else, though, I share the same opinions as you. I appreciate it for what it is and what it stands for in terms of cinema as a whole and how it's evolved. I appreciate things that it tried to do story wise and character wise. I just feel like, again, I said this earlier, but there's like an element missing that just needed to be ironed out, and then it could have been pretty decent. Um, but yeah, this is a film that I appreciate and respect more than I actually enjoy. Again, I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. I think it surprised me more in the sense that like the scenes that I thought would age. Again, I'm repeating myself. The scenes I thought would age the worst have aged the best, and vice versa, which I was not expecting. But the fact that that's what I've come away appreciating the most about this film is that the thing that was the more groundbreaking it is the thing that is what this film is remembered for the most, but also it's the best element of the movie in a few different ways is quite surprising, but I'm glad that that's the case. No one really remembers this film for the real world scenes, and understandably so because they're kind of the most lackluster part. But
Yeah.
where it put all of its money and effort and time and thought is really what it's remembered for the most, and is by quite a long shot the best element of the film, and it still holds up.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's really well said, and I think that's what makes it interesting for us. So, everybody watching at home, I do want to hear your thoughts on Tron, especially if maybe you're watching this the first time before the new one. You've picked up the 4Ks. As I said, maybe there'll be a video on the 4Ks if they come in time or there's something to do. I don't just do videos for the sake of it, but we did do a lot of home media reviews a couple of years ago, but I just had to
Mm,
drop it for life reasons. And the Trons are something I've been really curious to take a look at, which means I get to rewatch both of them.
mm,
One of which, it'd be fun. Um, But yeah, this has been a fun discussion, and it's been fun talking Tron with you. Now, we are doing a Tron video every week, as I mentioned. It will just be me on Tron Uprising next week. If you haven't seen the series, I really recommend watching it now. It's 18 episodes, 20 minutes each. They're streaming on Disney Plus. It's a series that got cancelled far too early that was set between Tron and Tron Legacy, which is why I'm doing Uprising in between the pair of them, which I think canonically will work a little bit better, presuming Ares isn't actually a hidden prequel somewhere somehow, which we know it's not, thankfully. So there's going to be more Tron stuff coming every Tuesday. There's a lot more things happening on the channel. There's new reviews. We've got London Film Festival, which you mentioned as well. It's going to be starting to get busy, and after we're done with the Tron, there is a very big series starting in November, which we are deep into preparation for, which we will have a little bit more detail about in the coming months. So once again, Aaron, thank you so much for jumping on, for taking time in the day to do so. It's been fun having this chat with you. I'm very excited to watch Tron Legacy. I'm scared of how long that talk could be. But that is going to be quite something. So that is me rounding out. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and we'll see you then.